Now,
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:36 as we charge along here on this Thursday morning. Thanks for letting us have a ride along on your morning routine and morning commute. And if you're just waking up, hey, good morning. It's a great day. Let's get to it and seize it, shall we? At 8:15, we'll speak with Gary Higgins. He's running for the House of Delegates in Virginia. And then at 8:35, Henry Rogers, Chief National Correspondent for the Daily Caller. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Mercedes Schlapp. And joining us right now, I'm astounded by this story. Justin Goodman, he's the Senior Vice President for Advocacy and Public Policy at the White Coat Waste Project. And he has a stunning revelation about our government's experiments on bats with a SARS-like virus that looks an awful lot like COVID-19, Mr. Goodman. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So first of all, just for everybody, what is the White Coat Waste Project?
White Coat Waste Project is a government watchdog group, and we are specifically focused on defunding wasteful government animal testing. A lot of people don't realize the U.S. government is the single largest funder of animal testing in the world. We waste about $20 billion a year on it. And we were the first group to expose that the NIH funded the Wuhan lab back in early 2020 and have since been investigating how the pandemic started and how we can prevent another one from happening.
Well, and we appreciate all of that great work, incredibly important. And, you know, you think about the Wuhan lab and the wet market and the bat soup and the pangolins and all the stories they told us there. And you think it's a very foreign, very remote, very, you know, almost medieval medical experimentation that's going on in communist China. But you've now uncovered very similar experiments that Anthony Fauci directed out of the NIH in 2018. And if you're keeping score, folks, that's about a year before anyone heard of this virus coming out of Wuhan, right?
Yeah, and honestly, it's a real doozy. So we uncovered documents showing that in 2018, the NIH paid for a study in which, here's where it gets very strange, bats from a zoo in Thurmont, Maryland, the Catoctin Zoo, a shady roadside zoo with really crappy reviews online. The zookeeper at this place used to work in the NIH animal labs, and this zoo sent
did they just like bring home some of the animals from the lab and start a zoo?
We've got a Freedom of Information Act request out to find out exactly how it happened. So this zoo in Maryland sent a dozen bats to a Fauci-run lab in Montana. It's a bioagent lab that works with Ebola, plague, collects viruses from around the world and stockpiles them here in the United States for experiments. So they sent these 12 bats there, and then they infected them with a SARS-like coronavirus that was shipped directly from the Wuhan lab to the United States. And then they killed and dissected the bats. And as you said, this is very similar to the experiments that ultimately were done in Wuhan. Now, I want to also add that this NIH lab in Montana also has a history of infected animals escaping, biosafety breaches, unauthorized people getting inside, bioweapons development, and the NIH is currently upgrading and expanding its bat lab with $125 million of COVID relief money.
No way. Stop it.
True. Yeah.
And so now you've put this report out there. It's getting some attention. And, of course, we've got a local angle to it since the Catoctin Wildlife Preserve is like, 15 miles away from Camp David, right? Or actually closer, 7 miles from Camp David. And has there been any response from the NIH? Have they said, "Oh yeah, this is normal procedures. There's nothing untoward here"?
So the NIH hasn't responded. The zoo hasn't said anything. But members of Congress have been, not only contacting us through social media, but contacting me, trying to see how they can get involved. Senator Joni Ernst, who's been a great leader on this issue, is working on some accountability for the NIH regarding this boondoggle. And yeah, there's been an outpouring of support. I mean, Elon Musk has tweeted about it, so we're really thrilled that the story has gone viral.
Well, and you're on O'Connor and Company on WMAL. Let's not bury the lead there, Goodman.
Here we go. Yeah.
So I mean, listen, devil's advocate. Are there people out there listening right now who will hear this report and say, listen, this is just how science happens. Don't be a Neanderthal. We have to experiment with these viruses on bats so that we can. What is the scientific benefit of this? That's my worst Anthony Fauci impersonation I've ever done.
It was actually very good. I think as we saw with the COVID lab leak, collecting deadly and incurable viruses in remote parts of the planet, like southern China, and then stockpiling them and manipulating them in animal labs, whether it's in the U.S. and abroad, is a recipe for disaster. And despite billions of dollars wasted on these kind of experiments, this virus hunting and gain of function experiments on animals, there hasn't been a single example, a single success story where a pandemic was predicted or prevented, and in fact, this type of gain-of-function experimentation probably actually caused a pandemic.
This is exactly what I wanted to ask you. Can they point to say, listen, if we didn't do this gain-of-function research on these bats or on these other animals, we wouldn't have had this benefit X? Can they point to anything and say, this was wonderful and it happened because we do these experiments? To move on, Justin Goodman, I'm sorry we lost your connection, Senior Vice President for Advocacy and Public Policy at the White Coat Waste Project. Imagine selling your house without ever